Hey guys and girls, Board Now back with you. On this video I go back to Ozark Season 4 Part 1. So Season 4 Episode 6 of Ozark. The episode is called Sangre, Sobre, Todo. I hope I've pronounced that right. It's quite a mouthful to pronounce. Full spoilers as always from the start of this review, and yeah, this is a pretty major episode with a lot going on. There's some great stuff with like Wendy and with Darlene, and obviously various things, sort of internal like struggles with the birds ahead of their proposed like moving to Chicago once again, and a lot of things really boil into her head in this one. But the episode starts with like a bomb explosion when the FBI are like raiding trucks, and Maya's once again on the scene. She like sort of notices what's happening at the last minute. There's this guy like in a disguise who kind of gives them a message like no more bodies or something like that, and it becomes clear then Javi has set up the whole bombing, so as like a warning type thing, and this potentially puts the whole negotiation and deal between the FBI and Navarro on hold, because Navarro is being his sort of kind of brash, self in this, where he sort of expects everybody else to like get on with things, and he's, because obviously when Wendy and Marty find out, they start ringing people, and like Marty's talking to Maya on the phone. Maya's upset at it and thinks this puts things in jeopardy. Wendy's talking to Navarro, and Navarro, as I said, he sort of says later then he'll take care of the Javi situation, but he says right now I want to set up the meeting for tomorrow with the FBI, and like Marty says that, and he tries to like sort of sell it to Maya, then what just happened is even more reason to speed things up, but I'm not sure Maya's quite gonna buy it. And she or someone above her, I can't remember which way around it is, but they say we're not going to meet with Navarro until we get assurances, until we get proof of then he didn't set the bomb, he wasn't involved in that call. So it becomes a big thing in the episode, and it's sort of drawn out. It's quite hard for Marty to get evidence, but eventually there's a scene with him and Javi later on where he like goads Javi into, admitting that it was him who did, sort of set that up, and then he was part of the whole thing. So, and Maya's there in like a back room and they're recording it, and she's like, okay, send it to Chicago. So they send it to the hires up, and eventually by the end of the episode the meeting is set for like 12 hours. So that's obviously going to be a big part of the next episode, that meeting. But there's a lot of like positioning and tension to do with the future of the cartel and the future of like the business, and what it could mean for all the various characters. And because of the way Navarro is and kind of how unpredictable he is, it makes it hard to know exactly what the future might hold in store for the birds, because he sort of has this very casual approach when it comes to Javi, and in some ways he's like, well, you've just got to deal with it, sort of thing. Because when Marty's saying we need proof, he's like, well, you're with him, so go and get proof. And there's an interesting scene where he's talking to Javi back in Mexico, and he's like, I'm retiring, I'm standing down, so the business is now yours. And this is when Javi starts talking about, well, what about the birds? What about the FBI? We can't trust them. And Navarro basically says to him, you can sort that out once all this is through. Once we've ironed out a deal with the FBI, then we can arrange this stuff, and you can do what you like with the bird. So it's almost like he's giving him free reign to go and kill the bird. So that's obviously something to keep an eye on. And I mean, knowing Javi the way we do already in this drama, it doesn't really take him long to start throwing his weight around, because he goes and he announces to Marty that he's the new boss basically, and he starts nosing into the Maya affair, suggesting, can we really trust her, can you put me in touch with her? And Marty's kind of, to keep the peace, he's like, well, she only really deals with me. And obviously long term Javi isn't going to take that for an answer, and once again he definitely stirs some shit up in this episode once again. I think what's interesting is then, I think on some levels Navarro does find him a bit of a nuisance, so I wouldn't be totally surprised if in the future he would be happy to have his nephew killed off if he overstepped his mark too much, or maybe there's at least uncertainty over would he actually do that, or would he be loyal to him. It might just be that he's so neutral and wants out of the business anyway, wants to retire, so he's quite happy for his nephew to take over. But if push came to shove, it could be quite interesting. Another thing which Javi gets involved with in this episode is then, because Wendy has a new lawyer who she says, you're our lawyer, you can be involved. Can you be involved in be involved in ironing out the deal with the feds and with the cartel, rubber stamp that. And he's not so keen at first, but then she sort of makes it clear to him, because he points out what happened to the last lawyer, to Helen, but Wendy's that's different. She was their lawyer, our lawyer, you would just be ours. And that's something which is challenged later in the episode, and it's challenged by Javi, because he comes around to the lawyer's house and is really threatening about, you sort of work for me sort of thing. And the lawyer's trying to distance himself, saying, well, I'm hired by the birds, I'm their lawyer, not the cartel lawyer. And yeah, Javi is putting pressure on him. He's quite threatening towards his dog at one point, which is obviously isn't very pleasant. You gotta think at some point Javi is gonna get his. You're just sort of willing it to happen. But the other big stuff in this episode is then things are continuing to step up in the Darlene Wendy situation. Wendy goes and visits her in the hospital after the ending of the last one, where she had the heart attack. Wendy obviously ruffled her feathers, talking about various things, and she just warns her to stay away from Jonah from now on, let Jonah come back to his family. And Darlene stands her ground, but Wendy's mocking her a lot. She's just me mentioning this stuff gave you a heart attack, just we took your land, just think what I could do. But Darlene doesn't back down. She has this nice line about how it's Jacob had a heart attack. To me this is just a minor discomfort or something, which is a really good line. But yeah, once again the feud continues to intensify. Darlene's too stubborn to back down, and we sort of see really how petty she is, because when she's in the hospital, Wyatt well, Ruth is looking after well, not her son, but Zeke, and like Jonah's obviously there as well, and this displeases Darlene because she's desperate for it to be like, okay, no, Wyatt, you're my family. You and Zeke are my family. Ruth isn't your family. She went behind our backs and worked with the birds, and I think what's interesting is Darlene's as part of the rivalry with Wendy, she's determined to maybe hold the whole thing with Jonah over her. So she's in a way quite happy for him to continue working with her. But yeah, she definitely has a beef with Ruth and tries to drive a wedge between them once again. And I mean, poor Wyatt, you have to feel sorry for him because he is so emotionally manipulated in this episode once again. And another thing which goes down is Frank Senior is added to like Darlene's list of like casualties. She blows him away in glorious Darlene's fashion, because he comes over at one point and starts laying down the law about the whole drug deal and what's gone down. And he's in full-blown rant mode, and she's just like standing there taking it, and you can predict what's coming next. Yes, boom, blows him away across the room. And I mean, poor Wyatt has to come back and sees it. And Darlene's, of course, so casual, and she, yeah, they have this moment, but then it's of course Wyatt. I said Jonah, I think, but it's Wyatt, of course, who has to bury the body. And I think it's at this point where he once again realises, and because he goes to Ruth and she's like, oh my God, she's crazy. She killed, Frank Senior, and Ruth has been like trying to get him to say, okay, we need to get the hell out of here. We've got enough money now. We can start afresh. We can start our lives again, and you can go back to college or whatever you want to do. And it's the stuff with Frank Senior which makes up Wyatt's mind, so that they're setting their plans in motions. And what happens is then Ruth goes to Frank Jr. and says, I'm the only one who knows, Darlene killed him, killed your dad. And because this is the first time where they've actually like gotten on a little bit, and he's obviously very emotional. But Ruth makes him promise, give me tomorrow to straighten things out, and after that you can have at it, you can kill Darlene, whatever you want to do. So the whole plan is then Ruth will set this up, and her and Wyatt will leave, and then they're out of the firing range. Unfortunately, there's like a spanner in the works, and that spanner is like in the continuing feud with like Wendy and with Darlene. Wendy calls social services and mentions about Darlene's heart attack, mentions certain things that might make her like an unfit mother. So social services come down hard and say, by the end of the week we're gonna like come and take Zeke back. And once again, like Wyatt is like dragged into the middle of this, and he's kind of manipulated emotionally because Darlene's getting all emotional. And yeah, he's obviously not strong enough to like stand up and say, no, sorry about this, but I've got to leave now. And there's like a funny scene with him and like Free where they're actually like rehearsing things about how it would go down. And it's a funny little scene because like at one point Free's like, well, just do it like Ruth would do it. And he starts doing like a Ruth impression and being all like sweary and quite blunt. But yeah, you sort of sense there was going to be a sting in the tail with that storyline. And the sting is then, yeah, Wyatt finds this out, and he comforts Darlene, and he says, wouldn't things been different if we actually got married? So that's the turnaround, then they're going to get married, unfortunately, which is just too sort of gross to think about. I'll just say that. And I think what's important with this storyline to remember is it could be Wyatt's downfall in the long run. You sort of feel this was his big opportunity to get out and leave Darlene and start afresh. But because this came up and he didn't take that opportunity, you now fear for his life. And on a similar sort of note, as part of that plot, there's obviously continuing tension with Wendy and with Jonah, and obviously Jonah's insisting at one point then he's not going back to Chicago, he's got his life here, and obviously Charlotte's trying to persuade him to go with them. She's obviously in this, like, she's getting ready for the move because she's starting to prepare things, like, as part of her role with the family business. She's starting to scout like offices in Chicago for the foundation. So there's some good stuff with her in the episode, but Jonah is insisting that he's not going. And then later on, Wendy really turns up the heat because she starts talking to the lawyer. I think his name's Jimmy or something, I can't quite remember, unless I'm thinking because of Better Call Saul, but something like that. But she starts asking him about, theoretically, if it got flagged up, what Jonah was doing with this money laundering, but could he be arrested but then have his record expunged and he would be fine when he was like 18? And he sort of says, well, theoretically maybe, although nothing is ever like completely expunged, but yeah, in theory it would be. And once again, seeing just how sort of like stubborn and selfish she is, because she like goes over to the hotel and Jonah's not there, and she sort of preys on like Sam's naivety, where she like gets him to let him into like Jonah's room and says he forgot his homework, he needs it for school, can you let me in? And Sam, being naive, of course does. And that's when Wendy starts messing about like in the computer and finds what Jonah's doing, and she plants like a red flag which locks him out of the system. And I mean, fair play to Jonah, because there is like a counter to that, and that is he calls Marty to like help him. And it's only later on, when Sam lets slip about Wendy coming over, then Jonah figures what happens. And Marty was spot on this, because it actually made things worse. It actually made Jonah more, furious and determined not to go to Chicago and not to have anything to do with Wendy. Like, he's absolutely pissed. And I'm sorry, like, there's a debate with this, because Wendy's trying to justify it as, he would never serve any jail time, and we need to tough love, she's basically saying, and kind of saying, oh, you're trying to be dad of the year. And Marty has this great line about, you do know if you send a child to like a burning building, then they won't come out of the flames back into your arms, do you? And that line really sums it up right. And it says, well, what sort of family do you imagine this to be? Because Wendy's getting on him about being sort of naive about the life they had back in Chicago originally, and Marty said, I don't care, I want our kids out of this. So he's pretty determined, and he doesn't want their kids to be involved in the business. So yeah, major rumblings with like Wendy and Marty in this, and yeah, it's a very like spicy, interesting plot, the whole thing with Jonah and now the feud with his mother. So definitely on Marty's side with that one. I think he made a lot of sense, and Wendy went too far for sure. Not for the first time, sadly, but really strong episode. And by the end of the episode, of course, when they've got like the proof that Navarro wasn't involved in the whole bombing, then the date is set for the big meeting with the feds and with the cartel, and it's set for 12 hours from now, as they say in the episode, and that's how the episode ends, with the clock ticking. So really big episode, really great stuff once again from Ozark. So that's episode 6 of season 4 of Ozark. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media, and I'll be back with more Ozark soon. Thanks guys, see you later.